This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. I am stoked to have a special guest today, Isaac Hanson from the band Hanson. They have sold over 16 million records worldwide and had 3 top 20 albums in the U.S., as well as many overseas. In 1997, they had the top single in 27 countries simultaneously. Zach, who wrote the single Mbop, was the youngest songwriter ever to be nominated for a Grammy at the time. And they have performed under their own label, Three Car Garage, for many years now, and also engaged in many other endeavors. I went to their symphonic concert, String Theory, a while back. They started Hops, which is their craft beer company. We have Hanson Day every year here in Tulsa. And they have one of the largest and most devoted fan bases in history. They're right now in Atlanta doing their Underneath Experience tour. And Isaac, let's go. We're so glad to have you.
Glad to be here, and thanks for your patience in coordinating this interview.
It's my pleasure. We have gotten to know each other also in our neighborhood. I won't disclose where we live, but it's been neat to see your family grow over the years. And you all three of you in Hanson are dads. And tell us about the ages of your kids.
Yeah. So I have 3 kids, 2 sons who are 17 and 16 years old. Everett is 17, Monroe is 16. My daughter and our daughter, Odette, is she's 10 and a half. She'll be 11 in March.
Going on 16, no doubt.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. No, that's the scariest part. It's a little different with the girls than it is the boys. Their kind of emotional awareness and cultural social awareness is such a different dynamic. And my wife and I have been married for 18 years. My brothers also have a bunch of kids of their own. They're actually more prolific in the child rearing than I am. My brother Zach, he has 5 kids. He and his wife Kate, and they have been married also for 18 years. And then my brother Taylor and his wife have been married for 22 years and have 7 kids.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how you have the energy to do all this, but
I'm hyperactive. That's the problem. I have ADD.
Do you sleep at all? I guess not when you guys have new babies. I know the answer to that.
Oh yeah, you don't sleep when you have new babies.
No, or when you're on tour. Thanks for working me in.
Of course.
I guess so many people have their story of where and when they were when they first heard Hanson, and mine is very early. I walked into my church, and you had found a venue there, and the 3 of you were singing a cappella, and hawking your audio cassette tape. This is how far we go back, and I bought one immediately, and I said, these kids have it. We played that audio tape until it literally fell apart. And we just knew that you guys had a tremendous gift of talent and just insight in how to write and how to perform together. How much did you sing together before you ever performed for people?
That is a great question. I'm trying to think about it. I mean, so one thing I will say is there was a lot of musicality on both sides of our family. I think even more so than I really realized as a kid. My dad's dad loved singing barbershop, and he was in a barbershop quartet. The truth is, I'm inclined to think that a lot of people are a lot more musical than they give themselves credit for. A lot of people, huge portions of the population, probably upwards of 80+%, can match pitch when they're in a group of people. That's why choirs work. You can when you or have people around you singing, you can match those pitches and things like that. So there, but our family was kind of unusual in the areas of kind of pursuing it. My mom's sisters, all three of her sisters, so four girls, they would all sing together a lot. They just kind of at family gatherings and things. My mom had a full ride to college at North Texas State for voice, which North Texas State is kind of like
It's a music
the
mecca.
Berkeley. Yeah, it's like the Berkeley of the Southwest.
Mhm.
Um, so she was obviously very, very skilled. She has a very, very good voice. First soprano, just way up there, very high, very clear, very, very pretty voice. And then our dad did a lot of drama in high school, and eventually decided that was not his path. Because amongst other things, I think once he got to college, he was like, I don't really want to do ballet. I really don't, like it just wasn't really the right fit for him. So he eventually decided to kind of focus on more business degree type stuff and ended up in accounting. But there was also my grandfather, my mom's dad. He had a couple of brothers that were kind of part-time, even at certain points, full-time musicians traveling around playing, trumpet and trombone and singing and stuff like that. So there was definitely a fair bit of that. And then also my grandfather came, he was the large family thing, I think, was probably inspired for my mother by the fact that her dad was one of 11 kids. And I think she really enjoyed that. And then my dad's dad was one of four boys, and there was definitely a lot of closeness. There was a lot of very positive familial connection to each other, even though my grandfather, my dad's dad, moved to Tulsa away from Kansas, which is where he grew up. But they were still regularly going up to Kansas and seeing family.
Mm. Yeah, I have sung with your mom and dad on their little Sunday night gatherings that they do
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and boy, their voices blow me away. I can see that you all were gifted
Yeah.
from your parents and on both sides.
And I'm realizing I didn't really answer your question. The truth is I don't know. I think that's the answer. I don't actually know how much we sang together in before we sang in some way publicly. We certainly sang for family. At my grandparents' house, we spent a lot of time at my mom's parents' house, and we would sing for people here and there. And my mom would say, "Oh, hey guys, sing that song." This, and sometimes it was some random cover song from the 50s. Sometimes it was some church song. Some that it did. Sometimes it was something we had kind of written in passing. And Taylor and I, so I'm the oldest. I'm about 2.5 years older than Taylor, and then Taylor's about 2.5 years older than Zach. And so there was a time for a brief period where Taylor and I would sing together, and then we pulled Zach in at about 6 years old. And the remarkable thing about Zach that is striking is I take for granted the fact that we just said to the 6-year-old, "Hey man, memorize these songs and sing the melody," and he just did it. And then Taylor always had this really unique innate ability to understand harmony. And so my mom jokes that Taylor harmonized before he talked, because he was not nearly as verbose and chatty as I am. But he was very, very good with music, always had that instinct. And I loved the idea of, I think, performing probably more even than songwriting or singing. I just like the idea of, getting out there and, being an extrovert.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, talk about getting out there. I know that you all in your extended family have a tradition with your birthdays. You have a special rendition of Happy Birthday that you sing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, a very good friend of mine, Jamark, he longtime friend. He had this fun idea that for birthdays you should have like a birthday medley.
Oh.
And so he kind of started this idea of doing a series of songs in a row, and we just kind of expanded upon that.
Uh-huh.
And so there's about 5 songs that we do, you start with the traditional happy birthday, then you say 3 cheers, then you sing the Stevie Wonder happy birthday to you. So you sing that one, and then you say Jimmy Cracker on I don't care, it's your birthday, and then you know it's a bunch of different things, and it's actually so intense and bizarre because all of our kids know the medley.
Oh, sure.
And even when we're gone, all the kids, and there are a lot of them,
Mhm.
when they're at a cousin birthday, they go into it. And it's the funniest thing
Oh,
to watch because we've had friends at birthday parties and they start off, they're like, happy birthday. And then all the family members go into this whole thing. And our another neighbor of ours who we've been close with, she was over with her sons, and she looked at us and went, "What just happened? That was the craziest thing I've ever
wow.
experienced. I've never seen anything like that." And we're like, "Yeah, sorry, it's a funny family thing that we just do, and all the kids know it." And the 1-year-olds, when they get accosted by this intense family medley of songs, about 50% of the 1-year-olds have burst into a little bit of a momentary tears because they're like, "What is happening?"
Oh,
Everyone's
that's
singing
so
so
sweet. That's a great
it's funny.
tradition. Your
Yeah.
own happy birthday like no one else.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, well, you became a huge star with the hysterical crowds crying and screaming the
Hmm.
whole bit
Hmm.
when you were 16. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
It's yeah.
what was
That's when the first big record.
what was the best part about that, and what was the hardest part?
Well, we had a little bit of warning about that kind of response. Even when we started doing stuff locally, things started to really catch on sometime between 94 and 95. And we began singing together in 92. And so by around 94, we had more of, we'd started off a cappella, as you mentioned, with, these little cassette tapes that we'd sell. And then it kind of graduated to doing some accompanying of ourselves, as well as reaching out to musician friends of ours and saying, "Hey, could you put together some tracks for these songs? Here's a song." And we'd like either sit around the piano and sing it, or just sing it a cappella and say, "Here's how it goes." And then they put together some, like, rhythm tracks and some chords and things like that, and we'd sing to them because we Taylor and I played piano, but it was in the early stages. It wasn't. I wouldn't say we were quite stage ready yet. And so it was this continual evolution. You start a cappella, then you're like accompanying yourself on the piano, then you're like, actually, just this piano isn't good enough. We need something more. We need some rhythm tracks. Hey, friends, can you help us with that? Okay, sure, sounds good. uh, my buddy Jamark's dad was an incredible talent. His name's Willie Davis. He was amazingly talented musician, and he put together some stuff for us. And then we then said to ourselves, okay, we gotta learn how to accompany ourselves. I always wanted to play guitar because, amongst other things, Johnny Be Good was really, really important song for me
Mhm.
as a kid. I loved that song. And then, of course, Back to the Future also was a really cool one. And then you had movies like The Blues Brothers, which we totally loved as kids. And and so Zach ends up on the drums, Taylor stays on the keyboard, and I start playing guitar. And once we started to make that shift, sometime between 93 and 4, you started to see a pretty intense pivot in the reaction that we were getting from crowds. And girls our age were like, "Ooh, who's that?" Like you started to get this kind of intense focus and infatuation with this idea of these musician kids. And then by the time we started playing as a band, we started doing school assemblies because we would play shows at places like Mayfest, the local arts festival, or some random block party of a friend,
Mhm.
who said, "Oh, I know you guys perform. Here, come, play for us, and we'll give you $100 or something like that." That kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
or nothing at all for that matter. but we'd just go to wherever we could and play shows. And inevitably, it would result in more opportunities to play for people. Once we started doing school assemblies, the reaction was pretty intense.
Right.
It was very clear that that we were onto something. Because we were just a little older than a lot of the kids that we were performing for, but not a ton older. And then the teachers would say things like, well, part of the reason why we're doing this is obviously it's just good entertainment for our kids as a good kind of like, excursion. But it's also, hey, if you wouldn't mind saying something about, hey guys, chase your dreams, go for it, encourage kids to kind of
Something
be the best.
motivational.
Yeah, something motivational. Be the best version of you. Don't be afraid of the dream. Chase it. That kind of thing. And it just resulted in us selling CDs or cassettes, and it resulted in more gigs. And once you started to see that reaction, I think it did prepare us psychologically for the fact that that reaction was possible. However, the scale in 1997, when Umbop first comes out, was pretty unbelievable. It's hard for me to properly explain what it was like, because it was kind of surreal on a lot of levels. It was what we had experienced, but times 1,000. Because you'd have a few hundred people maybe at some other gathering, but this time it was multiple thousands. In some cases, 10,000 people, are showing up for some random promotional gig, which, by the way, was supposed to be a record signing at a record store. But the response was so over the top that it was like, well, we got to set up a stage outside in the parking lot because so many people are going to try and come.
Uh-huh.
Next thing you know, it's 8 or 10,000 people in Kansas City. It just didn't. It was a scale that is unusual, to say the least.
Yeah. You got on all the talk shows and all
Yeah.
those TV appearances then, which boosted you exponentially too, I imagine. Yeah.
It did, and I honestly, I don't know to say what it was like in that experience. My dad would always say, listen, this is really wild and this is crazy, so just take it as a gift. Whatever you can, just appreciate it, take it as a gift, and do your best to be kind to people, and to treat people the way you want to be treated, because amongst other things, you may never meet any of these people ever again for the rest of your life. So that first impression and that first connection with people is really important. So just, do your best to kind of care for people.
I love that. I heard you say in an interview that your parents were spiritually oriented, and
Oh,
sounds like they were teaching you the golden rule, even in a very
definitely.
unusual situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that even a song like while it has a very catchy, vocal scat chorus that kind of disguises the kind of somberness
Mhm.
of the verses in that song, that song is very much about dealing with kind of, shall we say, adult problems as a kid. Um, dealing with rejection and people not understanding you, and trying to say to yourself, well, I've got to be able to be myself. I've got to be able to be me. And I've got to find the people that understand who I am. And those people will be there for me in the end. They will be the ones that will last. And the others are just coming and going. They're fair weather people, fair weather friends, fair weather, and that's okay. Everyone has those in life, but you need to look for the valuable relationships as much as you can, and prioritize those. And, so I guess that was just kind of always part of our ethos
Mhm.
as people.
How did you all handle schooling with all the touring and moving around,
Mm.
and big opportunities?
That is a great question. And the short of it is we did the best we could with the circumstance we were in. We were already homeschooled, and had been for years before the band kind of really took off. And that had a lot to do with our mom saying, hey, listen, I don't want to just send off my kids and not be around them. I value education, but I really value my relationship with my kids the most. And, you know, my folks are both kind of artsy by temperament, I think, in a lot of respects. And my mom is a bit of a contrarian, and she just kind of she I think liked the idea of bucking the system a little bit and just saying, listen, my kids will figure it out, and I'll do my best to teach them the things that they need to be taught. And there was a lot of emphasis on kind of a more classically oriented education, literature, history, poetry, um, and not a ton of emphasis on the sciences. I mean, truth be told, my biology was very lacking. And I barely got through, high school algebra. Like, it was not my thing. Like, the worst part about being a dad right now is when my son looks at me and goes, hey, Dad, can you help me with this algebra? And I go, here's the thing. I was horrible at this when I was your age, and I'm even worse at it now because I haven't been doing it for 20 plus years. So, I'm not going to be much help in this area. But our parents were good at instilling hard work in us. Especially our dad was very inclined to say, you take the opportunities where you get them, you work hard to keep them, you treat people the way you want to be treated, these kinds of things. He loved forcing us to plant trees and dig ditches and build, various, shall we say, landscaping ideas, landscaping projects that he had when we were kids. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. My brother Taylor was more of a pleaser and was more willing to kind of get in there and do it. And I was always looking for an excuse to get out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, God being a comedian, he also gave me sons that similarly, I have one son who's always willing for the work, and the other one who's always like, I really don't want to do this. Yeah.
Building character in those kids. Yeah. Well, and
Absolutely.
you don't have to have been a touring musician to not be good at math, because I wasn't. And I'm not good at it either. Well, and your choices for your kids maybe are a little more conventional. They don't travel with you that much, do they?
They travel with me in limited doses. When they were younger, they traveled a little bit more because we had a little bit more flexibility. It's a lot easier to take, a kid who's in fourth grade on the road for 2 weeks and not feel like they're missing much.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets into kind of middle school, high school, school starts to get kind of challenging in different ways. I mean, one of the things that my wife and I did, which I really loved, and we will definitely do with our daughter also, is we took our kids out of school for, was it sixth grade? I think it was sixth grade. We took them out of school for a year, fifth, sixth grade. We're talking about like, 11, 12, that kind of range. We need to spend a little extra time with, bonding with them and really kind of being there for them and having that relationship. Otherwise, we feel like we might not get the quality time we really want with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then as high school has gone on, we actually ended up in a little bit less traditional situation. Our oldest son, his senior year he's doing homeschooling. And our other son ended up in more of a co-op situation where he's doing 3 days a week of high school instead of a traditional 5, because he really cares about baseball. And we wanted to give him some more focused time with trainers and stuff like that for him to be able to kind of hone his skills. And he'll probably end up, we haven't decided what school he'll go to for the last couple of years of high school, but we're hoping that there's some future for him there, but it's hard to know.
Sure.
We're just kind of trying to figure it out one day at a time.
Yeah. You just try to set the table for them and see where it leads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you given them all exposure to music lessons? Do you say you
Mhm.
really must learn to play piano, or how has that worked with music?
Well, so my eldest son has always had the inclination to do it. He's kind of been interested in it since he was little. Since he was probably about 10, he really liked the idea of playing guitar and really liked music. And so he's continued with that, and he actually plays quite a bit. And he's writing songs and doing things of that nature. And so that is definitely an inclination that he has. I had tried to get our son Monroe to be interested in it. He has taken some very basic piano lessons. So has Everett. Um, but that never really caught on with him. Um, my wife is not particularly musical, and neither were either one of her parents.
Mhm.
And so I think while Monroe can sing, he actually has a pretty nice voice. He doesn't really have the instinct on a kind of creative level to really dive into that.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think over time he may develop a little bit more interest in that area. But but it hasn't been an initial thing. He really loves sports, and he's very passionate about that. Very willing to put in the time for sports, but for some reason the music thing has not clicked. And then our daughter is probably the most musical, and probably the most excited about all the things, whether it's going on long adventures in whatever city I'm in. She's basically calling me on the phone, going, "Daddy, where are you? And why am I not there?"
Oh,
It's like, right? And it's not because she wants to be with me, although I'm sure she'd like to be with me. It's really that she wants to see the place. She wants to
well,
go to New York City. She wants to go
see
to,
the sight.
London and Paris
Oh,
and wherever it is that I am. She's like, "Daddy, I need to be there. I need to go there now."
oh,
So, and she is, I joke that she's our family ambassador. She can go into any place and find a friend.
mm,
It's a really unique skill that she has.
mm.
So you never know. You never know what the future holds for her.
Yeah. When did they first realize my dad is famous? He was uh, mobbed by thousands of fans, and he still has to be careful about this kind of
Yeah.
exposure.
Well, they knew about it and they experienced it because we've, amongst other things, since my boys were about 4 or 5 years old, we started doing a gig at Epcot in Florida, in Orlando, Florida, at Disney World. And we got offered this gig. It was like 2 days worth of shows, and you do these like 35-minute shows, spread out about an hour apart, and all this kind of stuff. We're like, "Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds easy. We'll do that." And the cool thing was, it was like you also got a really good family vacation out of it to Walt Disney World.
Oh
We're
yeah,
like, okay,
that'll get the
kind of a
kids' attention.
kind of a win, kind of a win-win.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do it. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if we like it. And I think that was probably one of the ones where the boys started to really notice, because that amphitheater that we play in, holds about 3,500 people. And so we go out there and play, and here we are at Walt Disney World, and they're like going like, "Whoa, what is going on? Like, everybody's really into this." That's my dad. Huh? What? You know? Um, so I think that there was definitely some kind of gears turning in their heads. Um, I've never really asked them exactly when the moment was, but I do remember a particular moment with my eldest son, Everett, where he saw a photo of me when I was about 16, standing with Steven Tyler and John Bon Jovi backstage at the MTV Europe Awards. And he saw this photo, and he looks at me and he goes, "Dad, what the heck is this?" I was like, "That's me, you know, 15 years ago or whatever, with Stephen and John." And he goes, "Okay, so why don't we know them, and why are we not talking to them all the time? Right? Like, because he's listening to them on the classic rock radio station,
Uh-huh.
loving their music, and going, "Dad, what is going on?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I there just hasn't been a scenario in last few years where that would happen, but maybe that could happen. I mean, I could definitely figure that out." We were going to go, unfortunately, we were going to go to the Aerosmith final kind of tour that they were doing, and unfortunately, that got canceled. But I think that was probably the moment where it got very real for my son, where he went, "People that I admire are people that you know or have met before."
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's weird, but I also chose to live in Oklahoma, not in California, not in New York. And so it does mean that I run into those people less frequently than I might otherwise.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I loved in one interview you said, 3-car garage. Your label is
yeah,
refers to the three of you, and from a garage band kind of concept that
right,
you said that our music comes from a humble place, and
right.
I love that. I noticed that you all have engaged in giving back and doing charitable things, and is that important to you as a dad to show your kids that it's not just all about material success?
Oh, definitely. I mean, amongst other things, I think in part living in a place like Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where we grew up, I think is probably the strongest inclination in that direction, because while there are a lot of advantages to Los Angeles and New York or even Nashville, and there are things about not living in those places that do make my life a little bit more complicated, um, for us, for me personally, especially, I mean, it was always more about kind of living a life that you felt like was consistent with your internal values.
Mhm.
And I felt like having a family and having kids in a place like Tulsa was better for me and for my kids than somewhere else.
Mhm.
Um, and as it relates to giving back and all those things, I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, whether it's helping out with church related things, whether it is helping out with people who are obviously less fortunate than you in areas around the world, whether it's Africa or whether it's locally. My brother Taylor has really taken on a very cool project of trying to improve the access to fresh and quality food for people in um, poor parts of Tulsa,
Yeah,
like
food on the
places
move.
where food on the move, places where grocery stores and good quality food are not easily accessible, and there's a lot of factors there. That's a rabbit hole in and of itself that is kind of complex, because there are some bigger issues that are related to that as well, such as why are our local farmers not able to get their produce into the system as easily as you would think.
Mhm.
There's just a lot of kind of bureaucracy and kind of kind of corporate related things that are kind of intersecting, that are making it harder for us to easily access local food, which ultimately is the better quality because it's not coming hundreds or thousands of miles.
Mhm.
you know and so there's a lot of things there, but I think it first starts with humility, whatever that looks like. it, I think that's probably the most important thing to find is, hey, listen, I'm not important. I'm not more important than anyone else. The Me being on stage doesn't make me a better person. In fact, actually, me being on stage is more likely to make me a worse person. Um, and so you have to make sure that you remember to treat people the way you want to be treated, to remember that your time is no less valuable than the other person's time. And that's not always easy to balance because there are a lot of things that are pulling you in this way and that way, but generosity of spirit, humility is a crucial part
Mhm.
of, I would say, a happy life, but certainly a virtuous life if you can get there. I'm not sure I'm getting there, but I'm trying.
I think you're doing just fine. Um, yeah, I heard you say, that our work is really just the soundtrack to your life. It's,
Yes.
3 minutes that you take out of your life to hear what we have to say, and it should be
Mhm.
worth your time. I think that is an amazing attitude for a musician to have. I
Mhm.
think it's very commendable.
Well, music is therapy. I mean, for me
Mm,
and for most other people, um, we have a unique gift, a unique opportunity to express ourselves, express our hearts, express our feelings. Talk about the life we're going through,
mhm,
both in metaphor and in kind of literal scenarios, and trying to tell these, 3, 4, 5 minute stories, and it helps me get through life. And so when you put it out into the world, you cross your fingers and say a little prayer and hope that it has the same effect on them as well. Because we're in a unique we're in a unique position. Everybody has the feelings that we have, but not everybody can articulate them and express them through music. And so you're really kind of trying to help other people work through their own lives through the process that you've gone through of working through it in music. And I know it's helpful for me because at the end of the day, I'm a fan first.
mm,
That's the whole reason I wanted to do music, was because I was a fan.
yeah.
And then it became, oh wow, I can actually kind of do this. I actually kind of understand this instinctively. Um, and so it is a gift to be able to take the good things, the hard things, the bittersweet things, and put them into melody, into lyric, into song that makes some kind of sense, and put them out into the world and say, man, I hope this can be of value to somebody else. I hope this can help somebody through something. And my take on it is that if you have the opportunity to just help one person through that song,
Mm.
or one person through that concert, or one person through that interview, you've done a good thing. You've kind of multiplied yourself in some way,
Mhm.
shape, or form. You've done the necessary therapy, shall we say,
And
for at
you
least
and
one other
use your
person.
platform for something good, something beyond
Yeah,
yourself. Yeah.
absolutely, 100%.
I think one of the neat things about you all, achieving fame so young, I guess Zach was 11 and Taylor
Hmm.
was, what, 13, 14, um,
Yep.
was that you all propelled yourselves into the online world in a pretty
Mhm.
unique way. We're one of the pioneering bands to have an online presence, Hands Online. Hanson,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know
We
how you
couldn't get
say it, but
Hanson
it
dot we couldn't get Hanson.com, and Hanson Online
was
was
a
too
little
many ON.
cumbersome.
It was too many ONs. It was Hanson Online. It looked very confusing.
Looked like a
So yeah,
typo.
yeah, exactly. Hanson Line was where we went. Eventually we got Hanson.net, which is our website now. But yeah, it started with Hansonline.com.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, you hit right when people were getting personal computers, and it was such a strategic thing to do. And you were actually an internet provider, really
Yes.
early. I mean, that was ambitious. That was ingenious too.
Well, being first does not always mean being successful at it. But it does. But we did see the direction that it was going, and
Yeah.
we did have partners that allowed for us to be an ISP, internet service provider, for people.
Hmm.
It started in the year 2000. That's when we kind of shifted from the Hansonline.com to Hanson.net.
Hmm.
And the idea was Hanson.network, right? It was a network. And it was a lot easier to say too. Um, and we had gone from having a very, very significant internet presence because, as you said, we hit at a time where the internet was exploding and becoming a much more common part of people's lives. And a lot of that was our just natural instinct of being the right age. We just said to ourselves, wait a second, this is happening in our own lives. It's happening in everybody else's lives too. This is the direction that things need to go. And so when it came to Hanson.net, not only did we have an opportunity to partner with somebody to help provide actual dial-up service, but we also gave people their own personal web space where they could kind of have a blog type thing and kind of express themselves in their own way. But also it was a community where people could send messages to each other, where they could send messages to us, where we were regularly posting, photos and internet, logs, blogs, about what we were doing. It was not probably as robust as we ultimately wanted it to be, but it lasted for we did that for about 4 years and then pivoted away from the internet service provider portion and just embraced the community element of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that has lasted until now, until 2024. Like to this day, we have a very robust online community that does all kinds of things. We provide early access to tickets. We do interviews with members once a month. We do a specific interview with people. We do interviews before every show too, with one member and pick somebody at random to just do 15 minutes of a conversation with them. And really that's just about connecting with people. It's about giving people the opportunity to have an experience that you would think would be cool. And we've been doing that for 20 years. And since 2003, 2004. And part of it also too was that our fans ask us better questions. Like we do interviews and we're just going like, oh gosh, here it goes
Not that
again.
question again.
Not that question again. Whereas the fans will ask you questions like, okay, so this lyric in this song, where did that come from? And why did you write that? Or why did you write the, and it'll be a deep cut, song number 10 on album 5, and they're like, okay, what's this about? And that's a lot more fun for us personally. It gives a lot more life and kind of motivation for us to kind of keep going in a way. It's almost like a lifeline for us to break up the monotony of these very straightforward questions, which, I understand a lot of people are playing catch up, but the cool thing is the conversation you're having with the members is not, let's play catch up. The conversation is, we are deep in the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go deep.
Yeah.
Here's the question.
Yeah, sure. Well, I just want to thank you for your time and wish you well on your way and look forward to having you back in the hood here.
Yes.
And I'll close with a line from Mbop. Hold on to the ones who care. And I think you'll join me in urging that to everybody. Thank you, Isaac Hanson.
Thank you.
Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LeahFarish.